Uttering the Holy, both from New York Quarterly Books. His third collection, which I've read, is very good. Allow the Stars to Catch Me When I Rise is due out January 2017 from Salmon Poetry. He was born in 1982 in Lancaster, Ohio. He still resides near there on a farm with his wife and daughter, 2 dogs, 4 cats, and 5 horses. You are very popular with my children right now.
It's a busy place.
Yeah. Should you Google him, he is not the Adam Hughes who draws near pornographic depictions of female superheroes. It's a different one. He cannot draw. Adam Hughes?
Yes. All right. I first of all want to thank Darren for inviting me and Ruth. It's a pleasure to read for you guys. My first poem is out of my new collection that's coming out. It's called The Veneration of Sad St. Lutra. Sad St. Lutra, patron of riverside sycamores with their ivory arms, of incomplete constellations, their borders broken by oak and maple, of stream stones stacked on sandbars between the banks, of fallen trees stretching across the water, their roots the homes of crawdads, of clearings in the forest where we pitch our tents in sight of the porchlight, of the silent, the still, the sleeping, the star staring. When water drops from leaves and stars, they are the tears of sad St. Lutra. The 1,000 holes along the banks, the places touched by the staff of the Holy One. The current in the middle of the stream, the wake of his water walking. The pink in the sunset, coals for his cooking fire. When the hawk builds its nest in the top of the sycamore, it's sad St. Lutra who supports the limbs and holds up the chicks when they take their first plunge. It's the good saint who sings your children to sleep when they hear the coyotes and know what their howls mean. He sits at the feet of the ancients when the fire fades to embers. Some days he goes missing, lost among the reeds where the bank is a root-covered wall above the bend. No one knows where he goes, but a fire of pine and old hay will bring him back every time. The sparks, spraying and popping, remind him of stars at the beginning of time. He's heard their secrets. If you touch his forehead, they say you'll be able to find the sleeping places of foxes, silvery ones who know how to hide among the unlit boulders and beneath the brush piles. No one knows that this is true as his forehead is guarded by angels. I heard him once, walking through the long grass of the bottom field, but I didn't see him. All I saw was a cloud of fireflies as thick as truth. Tonight the stars smelled like river mud in the fur of a dog, a smell all thick with current and decay. 1,000 feast days, a dozen resurrections, 1,000,000 minor miracles, hundreds of totems, an amulet hung from the Pleiades, his litany written in a tongue forgotten by infants, remembered by the dying, still spoken beneath the stream. This is a poem that was out of my second collection. It's called Into Something Rich and Strange. Sometimes you can feel the distance creeping in. Continental drift where you wake up and Madagascar is gone. You know it was just here. Yesterday you saw it bobbing out on the waves. Today, just another disappearance. Another channel wider than the space between the strand and the corner of sky sea. There are days where the sky chips, the patina scratches on, rubbed by a dime, and the horizon splays out like a dissected frog. On these days, the deckled edge of evening, the silence of sinking, leaves you wondering about floating islands and why the sky resembles a dropped plate, faulted by falling. We will not all sleep, but we will all be awoken. We will not all change, but we will all be transformed. Love digs graves one atop another, and lovers are buried like layer cakes. The sea changes, the coral grows with each new wreck, and somewhere beneath the sinking, a new island appears to someone watching from another shore. I was reading recently about Guy Fawkes Day, where, the English like to celebrate weird things. And so they celebrate the failure of this guy named Guy Fawkes to blow up Parliament in the gunpowder plot. And he failed, so they make fun of him every year. And that's a very British thing to do. But I was reading about this, and the story was after Guy Fawkes was captured, King James wanted to get a confession out of him. But because it was a nicer time in English history, King James said, "Only do the gentler tortures." That was the quote, "the gentler tortures." And so that got me thinking, and so this poem is called "The Gentler Tortures." When children die, a firing squad. When children are abducted, the sun's straightness of rope. When children ask where mommy went, a torture. Pulling nails from nails. The relentless tug of equal and opposite motions. When children live with leaking noses. When they carry their skin in their pockets. When they eat flakes of dandruff and wash it down with the vapor of low-lying clouds the color of well-chewed gum. A gentler torture. The castaway alone, mouth open, collecting drops of rain, believing that with enough ocean, the tongue will become a raft. This poem is dedicated to my daughter. She's 7, and there's actually a couple poems in here that are about her, but this is called "Hideous the Scars of Beauty, and I Impaled." Doesn't sound like a poem about my daughter, but it's okay, trust me. It's not as bad as the title sounds. The horse's eyes are sad, but not sorrowful. They look not with fear, but with the experience of the long married. They're waiting patiently for the stars to fall, so they might eat them off the tips of the grass. Do not cry about things beyond your fingertips. The deaths of 1,000 glinting wasps, the frosted, the wilted, the broken, the rheumy-eyed. The world is not dying. It's shedding its skin. Do not fear the undergrowth beyond the first row of trees. It's dark, but many have walked there before you. Their footsteps still crunch if you stop your breathing long enough to listen. You're never far from something beautiful. When it rains for days, and it appears God forgot to separate the waters that week, remember me wherever I am, and know that I tried. The rain doesn't win or lose. It just drops when it's told to drop. Like baby robins from the nest, some flying, some falling, all changed. This is a poem about me being a dork as a kid. Enjoy. It's called 1990. That's why we're poets. All right. When I was 9, I dressed up for Halloween as General Norman Schwarzkopf. It's a true story, by the way. I outranked all the other kids in their Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle costumes their mothers had purchased at the mall. I proudly wore my 4 Silver Star stickers, the medals made of yogurt lids, the fatigues a few sizes too big. At recess, we shot Iraqis with sticks, our stomachs full of cafeteria pizza and chocolate milk. I wrote a letter to the general himself. I found it 15 years later in my parents' basement, like a letter to Santa Claus. Unsent, but so full of childhood that the paper crackled like distant stars It smelled of popcorn made in the old yellow plastic popper we kept above the stove. That same year, I lost my hearing in my right ear. I wore a big bubble around it after my first surgery and kept the gas mask in the top drawer of my dresser. For months, it still smelled of counting backwards into blackness. That was third grade, when it was easy to get Joseph Kaufman to throw a chair in class simply by saying, "Bo Jackson sucks." Clearly he had issues. We didn't know that then, we just thought it was fun to see someone throw a chair. And besides, everyone knew that Bo Jackson didn't suck. I had several girlfriends, some for weeks until we forgot. I was twice married on the playground. I was in a band with imaginary instruments and choreography that included the other members taking turns kicking me from behind while I sang. They told me once that I was lucky they allowed me to be their friend. Some things just stick in your memory, like a bee fossilized in amber, or your fingers after breakfast for lunch. I was a good General Schwarzkopf. Everyone thought so. No one saluted or anything, but you could see it in their eyes. It's called Driving Through the Dark Streets of Lancaster. I Miss My Daughter. I went through a divorce when my daughter was 2, and that's informed a lot of my writing as I've unpacked a lot of the emotions behind that and behind, dealing with a new reality. And so this is about her first vacation without me. She is 3 and on vacation with her mother. The moon is covered with wax paper. Just off the road, the fallen tree limbs await collection, the grass beneath them already brown. She sleeps in a cabin in Tennessee. Half of our town still sleeps without streetlights. The storm was dry and silent, save for bark snapping, signal flags in the wind. She'll return next weekend. We'll uncover the moon. It will smell of cooling bread. This is another poem from my newer collection. It's called Grace. Angel with the sword, hold off another moment. I just made love to my wife and we'd like to lie here. A grapevine and an ash, a twist of fiber, sinew and curvature. Please hold off longer, for earlier we stood beneath the cloudbird stars, pockets of spark amidst the smoke sky, and watched the horses doing nothing in the fields, heads low, facing north, doing nothing more beautifully than anything has ever done nothing before. Hold off with your cutting down and your famining. Tomorrow night is supposed to be clear, and all I want from life is to sleep in a world where love is made and horses stand, sleeping beneath the bleached arms of a sycamore. I had a poet friend who, several years ago, had moved to England and had gone through a rough time and spent some time living homeless. And I wrote this poem for her. It's called A Prayer to St. Margaret of Cortona. It's dark, Margaret. Darker than leafy shadows that hide the faces of the back alley murdered. The blankness of new moon sky. The refuge of centipedes on the other side of moss. It's dark, Margaret. And I'm tempted to personify everything as crying. The streetlight parabola on this pavement reeking of rain. The empty sky. The leaves disconnected from home, from branch, from blood and life. It's dark, Margaret, and I am alone beneath the smoldering of heaven. The blanket-topped coals. I am trapped. A starfly stuck on unseen contact paper. A drowning diver staring watery eyes at the lures of anglerfish. Morning brings no release, only the ability to see my captivity. It's dark, Margaret. All my prayers to you, bouncing off echolocations to navigate by, return well bruised and well traveled. No miracle tonight. The lamplight is still artificial, the moon is still in transit, home is still a taunting definition, tomorrow is still not today. But Margaret, I'll tuck myself into the back seat and dream of noise and distractions and all of the adiaphora that clutters these meaningless lives. Life is too sparse without it. It's dark, Margaret. Wink to me tonight. Slide a crescent into the curtains of heaven. Let the moon out and let me in. Overturn this rock and I'll scramble like a light drunk potato bug. It's dark, Margaret, and I am alone. Keep me company with your dirty face and streetlight nimbus. Mother of hobos, of prostitutes, the insane, the tramps, the orphaned, the recessioned, the downlucked, the back-writhing beetles. Illuminate. This poem's a new one. It's not even going to be in the new collection. It's called Anamnesis. What I like about, have you ever been to a concert, you go to see the band, and all they do is play new stuff, and you get irritated because you just want to hear the stuff you know? It's the great thing about being a poet. No one knows my old stuff either. So I can throw the new stuff in, it doesn't matter at all. No one's disappointed, and it's great. All right, so this is called Anamnesis. In the library the other day, I found a genealogy file, a family history of one particular name. It was an ancestor of mine, so I thumbed through to see how recent the compiler had gotten. Sure enough, there I was, right above my stillborn brother. Our middle names were reversed. I thought, how odd that something so simple could be flipped. When flying without instruments, I've heard the sky looks just like the sea. Our middle names are only different by one letter. Later that day, I read that a human could swim through the arteries of a blue whale. This world is full of wonders. Jacob Davis Hughes was born and died on the same day. It could be argued that he was far more successful at life than me. Every morning I lay out the pieces of my life on this altar and watch for fire to descend. Tonight the moon spoke to me in the voice of my dead brother. The voice I never heard but immediately identified. Like swimming through tunnels of cetacean plasma, some things are understood at a deeper level. Beautiful, meaningless, and truer than blood. This is my next to last poem, and it's, I think, probably the favorite poem I've ever written. And it's called On Plans to Build My Daughter a Teepee. It first appeared in the Good Men Project, and it will be in my book that's coming out. It will have to be big. Big enough for all three of us, and 2 or 3 dogs. Big enough for toys and a bed, and for the moon and the sound of the creek. Its poles will need to be lodgepole pine, or sycamore, or whatever they have at the local hardware store. They should be straight and tall like the rods that held the Ark of the Covenant. The covering will not be buffalo. It will need to be some sort of canvas, but a kind that's not too expensive. It will need to be beige. There should be stakes to hold it down when the Ohio wind comes through and tries to get warm inside. There will be no buffalo skull. No buffaloes will be involved in any way, or bison for that matter. We will find a place for it along the creek, an area I just learned is called the riparian zone. Our teepee will be a riparian one. She has no idea what riparian means, or the difference between buffalo and bison. She has no idea I'm making her a teepee, which is good because then it won't disappoint her when I don't. I once built a swing, which is almost like building a teepee. One day, of course not now, when the winter skies are full of cement and the riparian trees offer nothing of value, we'll lay amidst the teardrops of evening on a floor of grass and count the stars through the smoke hole. She'll be amazed that she can count them, maybe 15 at most. And she'll probably say, "Daddy, those stars are lucky because we're letting them see in. Those other stars, the outside ones, don't know how warm it is in here." I'll wonder when her eyes turn that particular shade of spark. Then her mom will pick her up, and I'll go back inside the teepee, and the grass will smell like her hair. And I'll become one of those outside stars. And then I'll remember why I didn't build the teepee. Now, this is my last poem tonight, and it's called "On a Piano Discarded by a Pioneer on the Oregon Trail." I read somewhere about families unburdening their wagons early on in the journey. Pots and pans and furniture lining the ruts somewhere between the banks of the Platte. I picture a lone traveler. I don't know why he's alone, but I choose to think it's because he wants to be. But he doesn't. I think there's probably a lover back in Cincinnati, maybe a creditor in Springfield, but either way, he's alone. I think he approaches the piano upright and scratched, the only specimen of its kind for hundreds of miles, the way a horse approaches a newly fallen tree, hesitant, as if at any moment it could come to life or throw forth some spark that it conceals within its belly of wood, ivory, and the resonance of memory. He reaches out slowly, curiously. Maybe his chest rumbles with something resembling laughter. It's not real laughter, of course, because the only people who laugh alone are insane. That's what he thinks anyway. No judgment on my part. The keys make a sound like the keys of a piano are supposed to make. This surprises him, but he's not sure why. Perhaps he expected them to be broken, like all things that go on voyages and die before finishing them. He reaches to play another, but stops. He walks away, humming that one pitch. I picture him as long as I can until he disappears on the horizon, and the piano fills with grass, its belly full with one more note. Thank you all very, very much. Next is Ruth Awad. She's an award-winning poet whose work has appeared in the New Republic, the Missouri Review, Crab Orchard Review, Calyx, Diode, Southern Indiana Review, Rattle, The Adroit Journal, Vinyl Poetry, Epiphany, Drunken Boat, Atticus Review, Ovenberg Poetry. By the way, those are some of the best journals to ever reject me. So those are good, yeah. And in the anthologies, The 100 Years War, Modern War Poems, New Poetry from the Midwest 2014, and Poets on Growth. She won the 2013 and 2012 Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Prize and the 2011 Copper Nickel Poetry Contest. She was a finalist for the 2013 Ruth Lilly Fellowship. So, Ruth, come on up. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Thanks to Darren and Adam for awesome reading company. And can we just get a round of applause for Darren? His book came out recently. We're all very excited. Copies here today. He did not hire me to do this. I'm just doing this out of the kindness of my heart. Okay? Let's see, a little bit about the poems I'm going to read today. There's kind of a mix between newer poems and some of the poems that make up my still unpublished manuscript. And those poems follow my dad, who's here today, father, his experience in Lebanon growing up during the Civil War. So I'm going to start off with those poems. The first one being interviews with my father, names. When someone dies in Tripoli, we write their names on paper, next to their pictures, and post them where others can see. Walk the street where the names wave from the walls, flutter from windows, buildings gild with sheets, breathing paper, beating paper. The streets are paper. And we don't know who we're going to see, whose face will call from that collage, the hundreds of eyes glancing all around, as though we could lift them from the pages, as though we weren't born into war too, as though our religion, blood bright in the hands of the checkpoint guard, a flapping wing of paper, won't tack us among them, the raised, their names, white light. Since I finished grad school, I have not written many poems. This is a sad truth of being a poet. You just don't feel like it sometimes. So it's a small victory, I feel like, for any writer when you carve out some time and you actually write something brand new. So, as a victory lap for me today, I'll be reading a new poem. This one's called Chimera. I climbed each rung of your ribs, and my foot passed through room you made for me inside an hour of rain. Because I'm hunger and flame, I circle you like a rope circles an animal, circles a tree. My teeth are sharp with a new taste, and every exit looks like a place I'm going. A claw digs into earth and becomes the earth. You would have me gnaw my own ankle free, but my shoulders against a stand of pines remember where my wings once seared. Two blades under hide, set to music, a wildfire. My father is the sea, the stone, the field. I don't know what makes a country a country. If the sea softening an edge of land is enough to say, this is yours, and that is mine. There were nights in Tripoli when there was room for us, when the sky pulled up the wings of gulls and we watched their bodies rise from the beach. Days when I chased my sisters through the market and we sailed through bright saffron scarves, past barrels of grain and earthy bins of pine nuts. And how I stood beside my siblings, all dressed in clothes my father made stitch by stitch, and held out my hands for the candy he'd bring if work was good. I knew it was a lot to ask, and still I asked. Some days I'd swim out until I wasn't sure I could come back. The sun beat its indifference into my brow. The water, its mercy. Why choose a coast when my hands are stone? Why a rifle when my blood is a field? I carry these suitcases full of rain because I can't take my country. If it's a choice you want, I've never known a world that wasn't worth dying for. A lot of the poems that I've written about the Lebanese Civil War were kind of a compilation of my father's experience, and I also interviewed some of his friends who lived in Lebanon during the war too. So this one is kind of a melding of their two stories, and it's called Elevator. You only leave when the shelling begins. Your 16th story flat rattles, but you let your neighbors cut ahead. Earlier you saw militias crouched in alleys, ashamed, you think, to fight your Muslim brothers. And you raised your hands over your head to show you are a civilian. How deadly that makes you now. To take each flight as a free man, to walk between party lines and peeling propaganda posters, and the stench of sun-curdled garbage growing yellow in the streets. To take this time walking down each step because your mind is made up and you've lived this long. Years ago when the power cut out, your family hung in the elevator like a half-swallowed bite.
and you remember it now. The dark holding you there, erasing you. So when you hear drop your weapons ricochet through the lobby, you'd be forgiven for not feeling grateful. The reeds will split, and the bodies will bloat, and the mosques will call out for more. This next one is a poem I wrote for my sister. It's called Bassam. You want to know, did I have a name for the baby? But my body was learning a new language, Cutteridge. Nictitating eye of moon. I traced each word behind my lids in razor light white. I almost forgot to tell you, a boy. A wilderness of street lamps. He shone bleakly and took me home. He fell from a 7-story high wire, and I thought, it had to be a dream. I thought, I'm so happy you're not dead. Each morning I wake up a little crueler. Each morning my heart is a vulture beating its wings for scraps. Each morning it's happy birthday from the bottom of a river. Happy birthday sang the hollow point night that pulls back the red silk of muscle and lets the rot bloom. Why did I read that poem? I don't know. Yeah. Silly. Okay. I'm gonna tell you guys something funny to bring the mood up a bit. I have 2 Pomeranians. One of them walks on its hands. It's like a circus trick. We didn't train her to do it, she just does it. That has nothing to do with this next poem I'm going to read, but it made me feel better. So. Alright, this next one is called My Father Dreams of a New Country. America, I see through your glass. I reach my hand and my fingerprints are everywhere, like leaves the gust blows in. I don't have money to feed your fountains or enough water that it's never a wish, but America, I can't stop drinking you in. Your trains, their freights like ours, like vowels cut from my name. When will you learn my name? I'm running to you, but I can't get there fast enough. I'm strung up on gridirons and city lights. Aren't my arms tired of reaching? Isn't my back tired of carrying this night around? Be good to me like a summer rain. I swear I'm burning. Okay, just gonna read 2 more. This next one is kind of a lovish poem, which I don't write often. I like to write about pain and suffering, so. August. Inside the city of your body, a breath pulls past your lips, inflates your wet lungs, and shakes the gates. How strange that once we were dust in the belly of a nebula, and now look. We are so much smaller, hunkered naked on a twin bed, in an apartment that charts the neighbor's every heavy step. In a city veined with railroad tracks, pinned up by yard sale signs and lost dog posters. But somewhere, it feels like autumn burning worry into the air. Even here, my hair spools like a flame. When you draw my skirt hem to your chest like an oar, I'll hold you under. I'll be the stones in your pocket. Alright, last one is called Lessons in Grief. Sometimes I write my poems and just come to me in the middle of the night like a hallucination. Maybe a hallucination. So this is one of those poems. Sometimes they turn out fine and other times I'm like, ooh, stop writing for a second. Lessons in Grief. If you're gone, I mean really gone, then whose voice is that veining through the shower drain? No, it's only water. But here I am, half wet and stung with the mercy of living where your robe trailed like a thought across the kitchen floor, and my hands are filling with dirt. Or is it water? Tell me a well is enough to hold me. Or is it just the bat sweeping low enough to feel like comfort? I'm a clockwork animal tied to fading light, but the days never stop coming. Thank you all. Sorry for crying. It's my pleasure to introduce the star of the evening. Darren is the author of 5 poetry collections, most recently The 19 Steps Between Us, which you can buy today, and you should, because I'm going to. And that is from the press After the Pause. His poems have been nominated 6 times for a Pushcart Prize, and he's been robbed each time. I'm adding these things. He is the managing editor of the Best in the Net anthology and the founding editor of Alt Ohio and Ovenbird Poetry. Currently, he's living in Columbus, Ohio with his wife and children. Darren, I'm excited to hear from your new book.
This is kind of a neat. We've all got the 3 of us have probably dozens of friends in Los Angeles right now for the big AWP conference, and they're all in sunny 70, enjoying the food, and we're back in Ohio surviving what sounds to be like terrible wind, and doing it with friends and family and poetry. So that's not a bad setup. So my new book, The 19 Steps Between Us. For a while, I'd wanted to write something about walking past someone sort of in deference, not in necessarily an act of prostration or defenestration or any of those things, but sort of the physical lowering of oneself and sort of the spiritual connection between you and another person. And there's a lot of times you'll see sort of the gentleman sort of like, what up? That kind of thing, which is a raising of oneself, the sort of so on. And for a long time, I even wrote a column about this in Alt Ohio once. Talked about how I was trying to make it more important to walk past someone that you didn't know, and sort of how do you make that exchange, even a wordless exchange, an exchange that's not physical at all, because you don't normally touch, well, maybe you do touch the people you walk past, but it gets strange if you do. But so something wordless, something that has no real physical nature to it, how do you sort of honor that person? And lower yourself to them in a way that you hope allows you to raise them up a little bit. Because more often than not, we have those really brief things that it doesn't feel like anything, or it feels like someone sort of got in the way of where you were going. So what I wanted to write, and this will, as we were talking about earlier, and this will drive you guys a little bit nuts, last winter break, I sat down to try to do this, and I wrote this book in 11 days, and really tried to keep the flow of that sort of exchange and find different ways to sort of parse out the different sections and all of what can go into walking past someone and trying to make it something whole, trying to really make it something important. So I'll read probably 4 or 5 sections. They're all written in couplets, 3 to 5 pages long. And then you folks can get more drinks and more food. And I do have my books in the back. This one, much like the last one I did with After the Pause, the Pony Governor, and that one was more mean-spirited towards our current city governor. I apologize. But that one and this one, all the proceeds go to the Ohio's Alliance for Art Education. So Michael Prihoda, who set this press up, set it up with the idea that he wanted to put out books and that each writer would pick a charity, and all the money that was made from those books, not even to cover the book. So Michael, sets it up where the books get paid for and then all the proceeds go to the charity. So I picked the Ohio Alliance for Arts Education just to sort of keep Ohio's youth squirrely and agitated and ornery, hopefully, is what we're going for. So the first section is step 1, an evaluation of my physical purpose. Each touch of my body to a surface other is a prompt to keep touching, keep moving, like a river that is almost all banked to bed. And though I rarely look at the trust between my mind and the strength of the sweaty shell of my mind, I must know how or why I rush forward. I must wait for the wind to pass and allow only my voice to greet the lovely synapses of this good body. I must have more control of the philosophy of the physical so that my surprise is limited to the collision of the image and the acts of my image. I choose to keep walking because I wager on my toes so much more than I balance on my heels. The shadows will do what the shadows will do. I will know how my arms swing. I will know the pace of my gait and the context for my speed, how lion I can be without showing my teeth. To the first person I welcome into the bounce back of my mattering into their mattering. I will trace my beard from my jawline, and with one hand I will drag it down, straighten it to threaten only the limp parts of me. I will know to choose the limp nature. I will know that doesn't mean weakness. Once 3 buses pass me, I will evaluate everything again. I am desperate to be physically undesperate and ultimate in my control, in my bend and pace of things. And when I finally embrace the actual motion of my muscles, so many muscles that are almost always useless, there will be no battles taking place anywhere beyond my bad knee, my torn up shoulders. I will take those survivor joints as emissaries to the person in the great distance, and I will offer them as cracked branches, as an opening monologue. Do you see? Do you see how hindered I might be, and yet I'm strong and willing to become the shake that can never stop? My ultimate meaning is the meaning of my departure from this stasis, where I catalog every concrete lightning of my stiffness and open each flag of my own being to welcome against the wind of the world and every passerby that joins me on this plane, on this sidewalk, in this city. And since that will be my whole world, every single time I cannot be prepared enough to bulb my darkness and season it with the sun, with the best of nature, and hope first that it will flower with their brief entrance into my garden of tendons and over-planning. I wanted this to be natural, but I wanted it more to be in deference. I cannot think first of another, and perhaps that is all of our weakness. I know it is mine. I want too much to be firmament on my feet, but I know to join any galaxy I will need another person, an orbit to hold me at a distance that can give both of us a reason to tilt towards the same flares of height and edge that before this we had only read about. And since my hamstrings can't read, I've had to mission the rest of me to believe completely that this prostration theory is one that will move with me and angle me with an intention of worshiping the arrival of your mission, which will become mine, if only for the 1 second we are open, and that is the reason to start walking again. So what happens in sort of, and was done incredibly well. There's a painter named W. Jack Savage who did the cover art here, and you can see there's a person way off in the distance, and they're sort of working their way towards each other. And sort of to set up myself and set up the different things and what it means to get closer to a person. I wanted to set the scene. And so step 2 is this place. There is no distance between this land and the dogs of this land. The blood and burial of each koi blossom has been well documented. And because survival here takes the rush as guide, we cannot move slowly enough to be landscape and survive the winter. Something close to us wants to nest in our guts, promises to circle us forever until we become home sacrifice. The weather is a surprise, always a surprise. This, which means we are never dressed correctly, means that we are connected to the fumbling mess of so many fabrics that the land borrows into our lovemaking and limits how closely we can align. We have decorated so many flat and semi-flat surfaces with our poor aim for each other. The water, which has either bullied through our hard ground or relied on us to plant in a man-made lake, is free of any salt. But that means we must rely on the freshness of our meats, and we must rely on the freshness of each other. If you bathe in this water, it will make your body a new gradient. It will take prizes from your skin. It will begin you again, and that can be dangerous. This place is a letter of condemnation if you read it incorrectly. If your eyes are fast in the seasons and fast down the pages of threatening stances, this place takes daily. It will take an ecstatic place that will never rest inside of you and never focus fully in your vision and understanding what bundled scars can still be trusted to protect. One of the things I wanted to make sure was that as abstract as this sort of idea is, and to flesh it out into a book that's 70 plus pages of somebody walks past another person, right? I mean, that's essentially all that's happening here. I wanted to make sure to sort of put in the other ethoses, that can come with it. And this sort of thought process it's a part of every religion, essentially. It's devout in humanism and Christianity, in Hindu, Buddhism, all of these things sort of trying to not just raise up a god, but try to raise up each other, and whichever sort of process goes into that. And so the idea in step 6 is we believe differently, was to minimize that, and hopefully with the collision of the two souls in whichever directions they're headed, that they can raise each other up, and be seen better, if not by a God, then at least by other people. Holding different keys to different cages and missing many seedlings because we are rooted in the capture of ourselves. Why do we spend our crucial time when we are apart from each other, when we hold distance firmly, gauging the guild and weight of a millennia of other people's pledges, watching how epic it can be to believe only in the person in front of you? I need no name for you or how you've come to believe in your existence. If you value that break in aid and energy as a favor from the unknown or the known, it matters little to me. I want to frame you in this world, and only because that will allow me to raise you higher than I am right now. Your hesitation and disbelief that my arms were ever meant to do this is where the glint of conflict grabs your electricity first. You want to know what makes me think I can use my body to celebrate yours and not invade the formula of your happiness. I don't need to ever touch you to make you real gospel, and when we do finally reach each other, I will be doing so no matter the construction of your self-limitations. You believe that I want to remove you from the mechanism that gives you comfort, and though it does nothing for me, why would I ever risk changing the color of your cheeks? You are beautiful. Whatever you believe and whatever makes you that way is beautiful too. How we come to pass each other, even if it is only one time, that is the most beautiful idea I've ever heard, and since it wasn't my own, I must make promises to keep it pure, ecstatic, fundamentally affirming, an element that never needed to be explained to or be explained by in thoughtful flushes of the divine. Think, believe, and love that process. It is your own, and mine is my own, and that is the only reason we do not need to embrace fully. If I am, at the right time, strength enough to give you the waves spectral and enough of the physical avenue to move confidently, then one motion of my head and shoulders will be enough to wrap you in my adoration completely. It matters that you are looking outward and feeling granted enough of this world to accept my plane dipping below yours. It couldn't matter less that you have any names for what we've done. So one of the things that comes into those exchanges, and I think actually both Ruth and Adam brought this up sort of in their own fashion, is that two people meeting for the first time, again, whether they speak or not, carry with themselves plenty of baggage. Carry with themselves wounds and woundings, things you've done and been done to you. And if you think about it too much, you sort of want to hug everyone all the time, and that'll get you in trouble. But what you do is you try to find a way Not to put those things aside, because I think we've had enough sort of difficulties over the last few years with victim shaming and with sort of trying to hide the difficult parts of yourself and not wanting to show those parts of you to other people. And so I think talking about those things are good. Accepting those things from other people is even better. Because it's something that's really difficult for you. It's something that you go through a lot. Difficult things you sort of relive over and over and over again. We've had brought ups, divorces. We had an actual talk of civil war. And so there are things that, whether they're small to other people, they're all big to you. And so trying to be accepting and bear those wounds when you need to and have them covered when you need that as well is something that I think happens in this sort of exchange. Step 11, the wounds. Handed grief or bloom, scars by past tappings, names and bodies without subtlety or regard for the work underneath the people do for each other. You have been piled up and cut in the pile, and those people that are more like rifles than good soldiers of our humanity, their obsession with being the stamp instead of the supple paper has abandoned you on the weary shelf. Any shake, any approaching shake has the feel of war. One more set of hands to reach inside you and twist what you didn't know was beautiful until they made it their own peculiar smell of ruining. You smell every wounding. The skin is closed and you are whole, but that smell rushes your blood to a tide against a moon that you cannot see and has no desire to control you a second time. If your eyes are shut because of me, my approach towards you, then my change of gradient to take my body and place it at an angle your spirit can ramp beyond us both will be an undocumented moment for you. I will not shout to alarm you to my own wounds as I appear whole as well, and I am lowering myself in the